The one thing to change. When nothing else can. What do you do when you've tried everything, but nothing around you is improving? Sometimes life puts us in a situation that feels like a dead end. The illness isn't curable. The difficult person at work won't budge. The pandemic locked down the world. We pound on the doors of reality, but they refuse to open. It's easy to feel hopeless in these moments. Viktor Frankl, who endured unchangeable horrors in concentration camps, offers a guiding light for such times. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Goodreads.com, opening and Viktor Frankl's insight. Frankl knew what it meant to face the unchangeable. In the camps, every external situation was beyond his control. The daily rules, the threat of death, the loss of family. There was no way to alter those terrible conditions. So he turned his focus inward. This quote is his invitation to all of us. When all external avenues are closed, look to the one thing you can alter: your own attitude, your own approach, your own self. It's a simple statement with radical implications. It shifts the question from, how can I fix this situation, which sometimes has no answer, to, how can this situation fix me? Or rather, change me for the better. The situation becomes a challenge for growth. Storytelling. Frankl's challenge. Let's imagine Viktor Frankl in Auschwitz. He cannot free himself from the camp. That's the unchangeable situation. But he can control how he internally meets that reality. He decides to view his suffering as a test of his theories, as material for finding meaning. Each day, instead of succumbing to despair, he tries to observe and find lessons. For instance, when a fellow prisoner is collapsing from exhaustion, Frankl summons the strength to support him. He can't change the fact that they must march, but he can change himself by choosing to care, by pushing his own limits of compassion and endurance. This inner shift, seeing himself as an agent of help rather than a helpless victim, is an example of changing oneself. It didn't alter the brutal reality around him, but it altered his mindset, giving him purpose and dignity amidst horror. Now consider a less dire scenario, but one many of us can relate to. Picture a devoted teacher who pours her energy into helping a troubled student. She tries everything: extra tutoring, meetings with parents, consults with experts, yet the student still struggles and falls behind. The situation isn't improving despite all her efforts. At this point, Frankl's advice gently suggests a new approach. The teacher cannot change the student's past trauma or home life, the situation. So she changes herself, perhaps by adopting a new perspective or learning a new skill. She might decide, I will focus on being more patient and resilient no matter what. I'll find different ways to define success with this student. In doing so, she might develop creativity and empathy she never knew she had. The student may or may not catch up academically, but the teacher grows and adapts in the process, and very often, that personal change creates a new path forward. Real-world application and relatable examples. We all hit walls. The key is recognizing when a situation is truly out of our hands, and then turning that energy inward. Have you ever been stuck in a traffic jam on a day you really needed to be somewhere? You can't magically move the cars. So what's left? Change yourself. Maybe you change your expectation, accept you'll be late and use the time to breathe deeply and calm down. Maybe you change your emotional state. Instead of anger, find humor in the ridiculousness of honking horns that go nowhere. The traffic won't move any faster, but you will feel and act differently. Consider someone diagnosed with a chronic condition. They cannot eliminate it. That's the unchangeable fact. Their challenge becomes internal. How will they mentally and emotionally adapt? They might educate themselves, adjust their lifestyle, or find new purpose as an advocate for others with the same condition. By changing their outlook from "I'm cursed" to "I can make something of this," they transform suffering into strength. The illness remains, but the person grows around it, often becoming more resilient and appreciative of life. Another example, during the global COVID-19 pandemic, millions found themselves stuck at home, plans upended. We couldn't change the reality of lockdowns or the virus overnight. Many people took Frankl's approach without even knowing it. They turned inward. Some learned new hobbies or skills. Others worked on their mental health or relationships. People started home workouts when gyms were closed, or began virtual book clubs when social gatherings weren't possible. They adapted themselves to an unadaptable situation. As a result, they not only coped, but often discovered new strengths or interests. Engagement. Reflective questions. Think about a challenge you're facing right now. Ask yourself honestly, can I change this situation? or is it largely beyond my control? If external change is blocked, the follow-up question is, what can I change in myself to handle this better? This isn't about blaming yourself or giving up. It's about empowering yourself. It might mean changing your expectations, changing your efforts, trying a new strategy when old ones fail, or changing your attitude from frustration to acceptance. For instance, if you're caring for someone with an illness that isn't improving, you can't cure them, but you might cultivate more patience, knowledge, or even seek support for yourself to handle it. If you're in a company that's downsizing, and you might lose your job, you can't stop the layoffs, but you can reskill or reframe it as an opportunity to pursue something new. Pacing and encouragement. Frankl's quote frames this as a challenge. We are challenged to change ourselves. Notice that word. It acknowledges it's not easy. It's like life saying, I dare you to grow. And growth often is painful, just as muscles ache when they strengthen. But imagine the personal power and wisdom that can emerge from meeting this challenge. Instead of feeling like a passive victim of fate, you become an active agent in your own destiny. There's dignity in that, and strength too. Conclusion. When you can't change the world around you, change the world within you. Viktor Frankl demonstrated this under the worst conditions imaginable, and his words remind us that there is always one thing left to try when everything else fails: yourself. This isn't about self-blame, it's about self-transformation. By rising to the challenge of changing ourselves, we often find new solutions and meanings that we couldn't see before. We grow stronger, wiser, more compassionate. And sometimes, almost magically, when we change ourselves, the situation around us begins to shift too, or at least it no longer defeats us. So the next time life corners you and nothing you do makes a dent in your circumstances, remember Viktor Frankl's wisdom. That's the moment to turn inward and ask, how can I change in response to this? In doing so, you reclaim your power. As Frankl said, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Goodreads.com. By changing yourself, you meet the challenge life has given you, and therein lies your victory.